For the shaping, I used a pattern from Brioche Chic by Mercedes Tarasovich Clark, and it's the cabled funnel neck pullover. Here it is. So as you can see, it's basically brioche all around and just a pattern panel here in the front. So this is the base, and then here it is what I did. So I cast on 186 stitches for a medium size. My gauge is 20 stitches by 44 rows, and Mercedes in the book counts 2 rounds as one. When you need 1 round in the main color, then 1 round in the contrast color, for her that's 1 round. Instead I count every round as 1 round. So in her book the gauge for this pattern is 18 stitches by 24 rows. 24, that means in my counting 48. Instead I have 20 stitches and 44 rows, not 48. So this is the difference, but I like what I have as a size. So let me show you what I did. I won't tell you the differences with the pattern because it was just a starting point, and I used it basically for the shaping, but the rest is kind of my ideas and my everything. So I started with a brioche rib, with a 1x1 rib, and I knit 2 inches or 5 centimeters of 1x1 rib. I knit the rib and the brioche with the US2 275 millimeters needles, because in brioche I have a very loose gauge, so I didn't change it to bigger needles. I started the round from this point, so I have 48 brioche knit columns in the front, after that side marker, and then I have 45 brioche columns on the back, because the pattern panel is less stretchy than the plain brioche rib, so that's why for the front I left more stitches. So that I say brioche knit columns, that means I have 96 stitches in total for the front, and then only 90 for the back, and total 186 stitches. So for the decreases, well, all the shaping, as you can see, I didn't do it side by side, the decreases. Usually the decreases for the shaping, for the waist shaping, are side by side. I left 4 brioche knit columns in between, so it's kind of more to the front. You can see it in the front, it's more visual. And in the back, well, if you want to, you can do it side by side. And based on that pattern, I did first decrease after 7.5, show you, after 7.5 centimeters, when I had 3 inches total, I did the first round of decrease. So from the beginning of the round I have 2 brioche knit columns, then the left slant decrease here. After that I knit the brioche knit columns, the pattern panels, and then in the end, before the side marker, I have 2 brioche knit columns, and then I have the right slant decrease. And I did the decreases for my medium size. I did the decreases every 4 centimeters. And I did 5 in total. After that, from the last decrease, or let me show you from the hem, from the beginning, I had 28, say 28 centimeters or 28 and a half, 11 inch, and then I started the increases. So the increases were from the same, as you can see, I did the decreases from the same brioche knit column. So I did it here, and then the next time, well, you see 2 brioche knit columns and then the decrease, and repeating that every time. And then for the increase, the same thing, 2 brioche knit columns, then increase, and again 2 brioche knit columns, increase, 2 brioche knit columns, increase. And here the same thing, just before the side marker, it would be here, you leave so that you have 2 brioche knit columns, and then you increase here in the third brioche knit column from the marker. And the same thing with the decreases, 2 brioche knit columns, the decrease, the same every time. In between the foliage panels I have 12 brioche knit columns. And what else? So at 44 centimeters, 17 and a half inches, I divided for the front and back. So before that I knit here, I started this garter stitch edge for the armhole, and I knitted here 13 stitches in the beginning. So for like 4 rounds I did garter stitch here on the right side and then on the left side, and I was continuing in the round. And after that I divided for the front and back, and I just did 1 round with the main color, 1 with the contrast color. And at this point, when I got to the start of the round, I didn't continue in the round, I just turned the work. Since I have 13 stitches of garter stitch here, I just passed 1 stitch over the other one, and I just had 6 from one side and 6 from the other side, and just started with 6 stitches of garter stitch, and then I continued in pattern. Well, I did brioche knit columns, and I started to decrease for the armhole, and I did the decreases like every inch, every 2.5 centimeters. Every 8th row I did a decrease for the armhole, and I did it 4 times. And the same thing here, 6 stitches of garter stitch, and then the decreases for the armhole, 4 decreases. So that's the back. And then when I had how much, let me show you. So at 6.5 inches or 16.5 centimeters from the point where I divided for front and back, I started knitting the garter stitch for the neck, and it was on 35 stitches I knit the garter stitch, and the rest I had just 5 brioche knit columns. So 6 garter stitch, 5 brioche knit columns, then garter stitch, until I had only 5 brioche knit columns, and then 6 stitches for the garter stitch. And I just repeated that, and I did got 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters of garter stitch rows. And then when I started this for the bind off here, I started this round, I knit in the main color, I got to the end, and then when I knit with the contrast color, I knit everything until this point. So I have 6 garter stitch, 5 brioche knit columns, and then another 6 garter stitch, and from that point I started binding off. Well, I was binding off all in a purl stitch, since I was purling with that contrast color. You can see the bind off is here, you you can see it from the front. So I bind off here until I had only 6 stitches for the garter stitch. Then brioche knit 5 columns and 6 garter stitch in the end. So I bind off until here and just knit all this, and I knit with these yarns until the end for the back. And then here I added a new strand of yarn for the main color and one for the contrast color, and start knitting like I was continuing the same thing. Here at the shoulders I did a few short rows. That's why you can see that I don't have a straight line. It's kind of like this a little bit. So for the short rows I knit 4 garter stitches and then wrap and turn, and then in the next row 2 garter stitches and wrap and turn, and then just I knit all the entire row and picked up the wraps. But you can skip this part with the short rows and just usually everyone binds off on the shoulders on a straight line, so you can do that. I did it like this with the short rows. So here on the front I continued with flat knitting a few rows, and after that, so just like for the armholes, I did 13 stitches here in garter stitch. So I started the garter stitch and I started also the decreases here, mirrored like the armhole decreases. So if I did here the left slant decrease, here I did the right slant decrease, and then the left slant decrease and the right slant decrease on the left armhole. And just like the armholes, I did at the neck here, I did the decreases every 8th row. So after just a few rows, like 6 rows, I divided like here when I divided the armholes, I did the same thing. When I wanted to divide the left and the right, I knit with the main color and contrast color until this point. I slipped 1 stitch and just turned the work and continued just from one side with all the garter stitch and then the pattern and everything. And here I added, when I finished the left side, I started the right side and I added 1 strand of main color and 1 contrast color and just continued knitting the right side. So as you can see, the decreases here, 4 decreases, and then continued here. And on the shoulders I did the same thing as for the back. I did some short rows, but you can skip that part. So, and important is to bind off with the same. Here I decreased a little bit. It's important to have the same number of stitches. I used the 3 needle bind off here at the shoulders. Let's see the final measures. For the blocking, I just left it like this with I didn't stretch it, just left it to dry like this. So I have on the bust, I have 13.5 inches, 34.5 centimeters. That's a half. So you, for the entire bust, you can double these measurements. On the waist, I have 12.5 inches and 32 centimeters. And on the hem, here in the beginning of the brioche, I have 17 stitches and 43 centimeters, and on the rib I have 16 centimeters, 16 inches and 41 centimeters. And in length from the neck to the hem, I have 26.5 inches and 67.5 centimeters of length. And let's see, the neck, the armhole is 24 centimeters and 9.5 inch from the neck point. And this front is at like 8.5 and 21.5 centimeters when I divided for left and right in the front. So it's kind of everything. If you have any more questions, just let me know in the comments.